All right, thanks everybody for joining another edition of Free Training Thursday. My name is Scott, Senior Training Specialist here at Abacus Next. I also have my colleague Amanda on the line as well. She'll be reading your questions, and we'll get those answered for you at the end of today's session. Just real quick, by show of hands, can everybody see my screen okay? You should be able to see a generic matter up on the screen there. Okay, thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. And I'll assume that everybody can hear me since you followed those instructions well. And again, like I said, we're going to be talking about custom screens inside of the Abacus program. You know, one of the big appealing, features here of this system is the fact that it's so customizable. It's very, very easy. It's very quick to do. So, if you have to make changes to the way your screens look, once you learn how to do it, it's super intuitive and very fast, very easy to do. On that note, though, I do want to point out, if you have specific practice areas that you are focusing on at your firm, it may be beneficial for you to take a look at our website and look at some of the legal solutions that we actually that you can actually purchase for your Abacus Law program. Just keep this in mind. What you want to do is go to AbacusNext.com and then click on the services link at the top, and then you'll see in the drop down there's a section that says solutions by practice area. Okay, so if you do bankruptcy law, choose that. And what this will do is it will take you to a web page that shows you what comes with our bankruptcy law legal solution. Okay, basically, it's customized screens for you and forms and calendar rules that are specific to, whatever that practice area is. So I just wanted to point that out before we dive into our customizing program. But whether you have those legal solutions or not, you're always probably going to have a need to do some tweaking to your system, and that's totally fine. That's what we want you to do. So for anybody who doesn't have any of the legal solutions, you've probably become quite familiar with this screen layout that we're looking at right here. You can see my little administrative matter here, Tom v. John. It's a very generic matter screen. Okay, I have very limited fields. I've got a field for my matter name, my case number, the assigned attorney, the court, the data was opened, so on and so forth. I also have down here a little section called user-defined fields. I like to call these freebie fields that come with your system. You can kind of use these for anything. Notice one of them is a date field. This was something that was popular to be used back when Abacus couldn't be customized, so a long, long time ago. But now, you have the ability to do that on your own. And that's what I'm going to show you today. Any questions that you have, just type them into the chat box or into the question box there, and we'll get to them at the end. So again, here's our generic screen. Okay, what if we want to spruce this up a little bit? Let's say, it's doing an okay job, but we want to add a couple fields. I don't know, maybe assigned paralegal or something along those lines. Maybe case phase, something like that. What we're doing when we, take on a task like that is we're basically taking a field that's in our database and we're putting it on the screen so that a user can actually interact with that field. So that's a good thing for, a couple different reasons. One, usability. Okay, the more fields you have on your screen, the better it is for you. And two, reporting purposes. Okay, if you're putting information into a field, you can report on that field. So if you want to see, every single immigration case that's in phase 2, you can quickly run a report, assuming that you have a field on your immigration screens and you're, filling those in. So the way we customize our screens is by going into our file menu and then our setup menu. So file setup, and then down at the bottom, you're going to see a section there called user defined screens. And notice you have 3 options: name screens, event screens, and matter screens. Now, we're just going to focus on matter screens today because those tend to be the ones that most people tweak. But the steps are the same no matter what. Okay, what I'm showing you today is going to be exactly the same whether you're customizing an event screen or a name screen. So when I choose matter, this is going to open up a list of my current screens. So let's just define some things here on this little window first because I get asked a lot of questions about this. The screen ID is basically a code given to the screen that's identifiable. Okay, so you see here I've got like PI vehicle, paternity, I've got probate modest estate. okay, things like that, will and trust, okay. That's all that is. It's just an ID for the system. The page number, though, okay, the page number is actually the tabs on your screen. So when you open up a matter record and you're looking at that window, you have those tabs across the top. That's what those numbers are. They represent the tabs. And then, of course, the description is just a description about what that screen does or what it is. Now, the screen that I showed you in that matter, Tom v. John, that is the generic window, aka the original. Okay, so if you're wanting to customize that generic screen, you need to find the screen ID titled original. Now, the only thing about this is you cannot actually edit the original screen in the system. It's on lockdown. We don't let you do that. So what you have to do is clone it. Okay, so I would just highlight my original screen here, click the clone button. Okay, that's going to open up my screen in design mode. Okay, but notice up here in my ID field, see how my cursor is flashing? That's because it wants me to give it a new ID. So I would just call this, I don't know, we'll just call it webinar. Okay, obviously give it, a good description and things like that. But on the screen here, we see all the same fields that we saw, when we were looking at that matter in our actual matters database. So we have all this space here to work with, okay? These windows can be dragged, by the way. Okay, you just need to bear in mind, on computer monitors, you're working with a finite amount of space, so you don't want to drag this window too big. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But you can kind of resize that to make it a little bit easier to use. To add a field to our screen, all we need to do is just find the open area where we're looking to add it. Maybe I'll put it underneath case code, and just right-click my mouse. And in my right-click menu, I've got an option to add field. Adding a field is the most common thing when it comes to customizing screens, but you can also add text, like instructional text, if you want to, and that would just be text displayed on the screen. You can add note boxes, hyperlinks to, different records and things like that. But I would say adding a field is the most common thing to do. So if we select add field, what that's going to do is it's going to open up a list of all the fields in my matters database. Okay, so this is every single field that's pre-existing inside of my matters database. Okay, now I have a lot. You may not have as many as me. I have a ton. So obviously this means that the field that we're wanting to add already has to exist in our database. And if you, if it's a common field, it probably already does, like date of birth or something like that, a paralegal, but if it's something wacky like shoe size or, client height, it probably isn't in the database. So you'll need to add that. And if you don't know how to add fields to your database, please check out our past webinars on the website. We have a recording on there. And you can also check your reference guide. There's an article in the reference guide on how to do that as well. But I'm going to go ahead and run a search here for paralegal. Let's see, and if anybody sees it, yep, there it is, right there. Okay, so there's my paralegal field. Now I just click my done button. This opens up a field properties window, okay, where I actually, am seeing the field name. And the most important thing that we want to show right now for this particular field is this picture, this little picture field. The picture field basically has to do with how content is typed or selected inside of a field, okay? Like, for instance, do you force uppercase letters on the first, word, things like that. Or, is it only numeric, things like that. So the fields that already exist in your database, you can just ignore this because this is already taken care of for you. I didn't have to type any of this info in. It automatically is in there, okay? So all you really need to do, if it's a pre-existing field, is just click this done button, okay? And there you go. There's our paralegal field. We can just align this a little bit just to make it a little bit easier on the eyes. There we go. Maybe I just drag this over a little bit, okay? We also have a little grid down here. If you turn on that grid box, this will kind of help you align some things. Some people like it, okay? But once we get that field added, now we click done, okay? And now we have customized that screen. If I go back into edit mode, okay, notice I have my paralegal field right there. Okay. Now, once you have your screen customized, don't forget you need to assign it to the proper case codes. Okay. Every matter that you create has a case type assigned to it, especially if you're a firm that has, multiple practice areas. If you're doing bankruptcy, divorce, and, immigration, those are three totally different fields, or totally different screens, I would imagine. So you want to make sure you're assigning, your bankruptcy screen to your bankruptcy case codes. Okay. So what I would do is I would just highlight my screen here. And then down below where it says assign codes, go find the code that I want to assign that to. I'll do administrative matter. Click done. Click done again. It's going to ask you if you want that screen to be your default or your normal screen for your user code. So if you do use that screen all the time, you can go ahead and say yes here, and it will set that as your default. I'm going to say no because I use so many in my trainings. And now when we go back into that matter record that we were looking at, there's our paralegal field. Okay, and because that field by default was a drop-down field, I'm able to access all the codes that can be chosen. Okay, so again, now I can report on that field. I see it on my screen for my users. I can filter on it, run searches based off of it. So it's as simple as that. Now, obviously, we could spend, an entire hour diving into the ins and outs of screen customizing, but we can't do all of that in this short amount of time. So just a quick recap, okay? And please get those questions in there so we can get those addressed. File, setup, user-defined screens, choose the screen area that you're wanting to edit, find the screen that you want to edit. Remember, if it's the original, you cannot edit an original. You have to clone it, okay? That's a good habit to get into anyway. Anytime you're doing editing, I usually recommend cloning, like clone the screen, clone the rule. That way, if you mess up, you just messed up on the clone. You've got the original that you can fall back on, okay? But once you have that cloned, go ahead and click the edit button, okay? And now inside of your screen designer, you can move fields around, right-click and add new fields, add text, variable text, which is text that's obviously changing, okay? Text that you can change kind of on the fly, hyperlinks, different things like that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and turn it over to Amanda for any questions. I'm sure there'll be some out there.
Thank you, Scott. Let me just pop these out here. All right, our first question is, can we add a link for a hyperlink to a certain document? Or rather, add a field for a hyperlink to a certain document?
So when you add a hyperlink, it's going to an actual record. Amanda, go ahead and mute your speakers there. It's just echoing a little bit. Okay, there we go. So when you add a hyperlink, it's only adding to a direct record, okay? Or like a name or something like that. But it's adding to a record. So the thing about documents is they're not actually records stored in the system. They're just links back to where that document lives on your computer or on your network. So no, you wouldn't be able to do it there. However, every matter that you have, let me just show you, every matter that you have has a tab called Documents, okay? And you can change the view from list view to folder view, okay? And you can categorize all of your documents right there. And then you'll have a preview. Now these are images here, or folders actually. So you'll have a preview of the actual document over here. And that will, kind of be the same as, having a link directly on your screen. Now, what some people want to do when it comes to linking documents is they actually want to link them to events because, if I have, some sort of document that I have to file on a certain day, what I can do is I can actually open up an event on that day or create an event for that day. And there is a form button on your event window, and you can actually attach Microsoft Forms or Abacus Forms from your library directly to an event. So that way, when you come in, in the morning, and you want to see what documents you have to do for that day, there's actually a menu button up here on the top called Documents, and then there's an option for today's documents. And any document that's attached to an event that day, okay, it's listed there, and you can fill them directly from this window. So you can see here I've got, a non-rep letter going out today. I've got a client deposition appointment letter going out today, things like that. So no, you can't link via hyperlink on a Matter screen. As of right now, you can't. We can always submit that as an enhancement request.
All right, our next question is, can you make the fields longer so you can add more text?
Absolutely. So when you're inside of that screen designer, let's see, where's our webinar screen? There we go. Okay, these are draggable. Okay, see how I can just drag this? So if you just hover your mouse over those little dots, you can kind of drag the height and drag the width. Now remember, fields have properties. Okay, this is a database program. So when a field gets created in a database, the designer, the developer, has to tell the program how many characters it's going to allow inside of that field. That's how database programs, keep themselves nice and neat with regard to size. Okay, so if I have a field called, court case number, I can drag this field as long as I want. But if the field itself only allows for 10 characters, it's only going to allow 10 characters. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But that's how you drag a field to make it longer. So if you're unsure of how many characters a field allows, you can always type into that field and count them out. But what I recommend doing is just going into your database structures, and you'll need to be an administrator to do this, because database structures are one of those things that we don't want to give everybody access to. So you can mess your program up if you're not careful in here. Okay, so if you go into File Setup Database Structures, that's going to open up all of your fields. Notice right now it defaults to my names database. So if you look in the bottom left, I can change that over to my matters database. So if I want to see, so if you look right here, this first one, matter name, that field allows for 75 characters. Okay. So yes, you can drag it, but the field's got to allow for a much larger amount of characters. Any other questions out there?
Yes. Sorry, I was just reading it through. So our next question is, when you customize a matter screen, does this affect all matters or just the specific matter on which you are working? Do all users see the customizations you have made?
So that's a very good question. So the screens themselves, remember, they're assigned to matter codes. Okay. So if I look at my webinar screen here, remember I clicked assign codes, and I basically said any case that has the admin case code assigned to it, that's the screen it's going to show. So it's going to affect any matter that is an admin matter. So you don't have to do it for each individual matter. It does it in bulk.
How do you make the list box on a matter so that the employees are not able to add to it and only select options there?
Yes, I like list boxes. List boxes are a great way to control what data gets put into your system. We all do typos throughout the day, so we don't want to have the word deposition spelled 4 different ways because that screws up our reports and our filters and stuff like that. So anytime you can use a list box on a screen, I recommend it. So to do a list box, there's a couple things you have to have. One, you have to have a box, like the actual list box on the screen. And two, you have to have a code for the content of the list box. So when I say a code, think about your event screen, right? What's one of the codes on an event screen? The who code, right? Who is assigned to this event. And then when we click that little who code button, it gives us a predefined list of options, okay? So to add the actual list box to the screen, we just right click, and there is an option there for list box, okay? And then actually you can do this either way. I actually normally do it by just adding as a field, okay? Like for instance, paralegal, okay? Right now that's a text, by default it was a list box, but if it was just a text box, okay, one that I created, maybe I have like paralegal 1, paralegal 2, all I have to do in there, if you double click on and you're looking at the field properties for that, see my fast field code and my list box to use. These are the two fields that are actually the valid condition is there as well. Any list box should have these three things filled in: fast field code, valid condition, list box to use. Okay, and then obviously your fast field code, well, all three of these fields are going to change depending upon what code you're actually choosing. So for my paralegal, I'm using my who codes list. Okay, so basically if I was using my what codes list, this would say what. Okay, list box to use would say what. List box here would say what. Okay, and then that tells the system, okay, go find the what code list, and that's what we're going to give them for options. Well, that doesn't make much sense for a paralegal, so I'm going to change that back. Okay, and then when you click done, that's exactly what the system's going to do. It will never allow someone to enter in their own unless you go in and make serious changes to that field. Okay, so it's automatically not going to allow people to just type text in there if it's a list box field. Okay, but again, just remember, you have to have a code set up that basically holds the options that you want to show in the list box. So if you go to File, Setup, Codes, you'll have a whole list here of your different code types. So if I go down to Who, right there, and I click Edit Codes, here's all the codes that are in my options list. Okay, it's always good if you're doing a list box to have one line item just blank, okay, in case it doesn't apply. Like if for some reason we don't have a paralegal on this particular matter, I don't want the person to be forced to pick someone. So if I have a blank option here, it allows them to just leave it blank.
All right, our next question is, does everyone have to be out of the program in order to make changes on a matter screen?
So if you're just changing the screen layout, no. The changes will take effect immediately. However, if you have to make database structure changes, okay, so remember, when we're doing our screen, when we're designing our screens, we're under user-defined screens. But if we have to add a new field that doesn't exist in our database, then we have to go into our database structures, and that is something that should always be done with exclusive control. Okay, so you should be the only person in the system. As a matter of fact, you have to be the only person in the system. You can go into the database structures, okay, and make all the changes that you want, but when you click done, you have to click the button execute changes and create new databases. And if there's other people in the program, it won't. It'll tell you there's people in the system and you can't do it right now. So if that's the case, then you just need to, click the button that says postpone changes and quit. And then that will, keep everything that you did in the database, but it won't make it usable yet. And then when everybody leaves for the day, just go back into that window and click that execute changes button. Okay.
The next question is, how do you remove fields?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because, believe it or not, it is not in the right-click menu. What you have to do to remove a field from your screen is you got to go into your design mode, and you actually have to click on the field and then click the delete key on your keyboard. So when you hit that delete key on your keyboard, it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to delete this object? Just say yes, and that will delete it. Okay, so you have to do it once for the field and then once for the text, just so you know, because technically they are two different things. So yeah, highlight it or click on it, then hit the delete key on your keyboard.
All right, I have a follow-up question regarding adding a hyperlink to a certain document. So could you add a field that would link to one of the documents in particular? Like, for example, a copy of a judgment that's shown on the matter screen to click on, and also saved in the Documents tab.
What was the second part?
And also saved in the Documents tab.
No, I don't believe you can do that, but to be quite honest with you, I've never tested it. So, Amanda, why don't you jot down that person's contact info, and I'll do a test and see if there's, maybe some sort of workaround that we can do for you on that. But no, I don't believe you can.
Okay, great, I've done that. I believe that is all the questions that we have right now, but since we have some extra time, I will jump off for a minute and see if anybody has anything else.
I'll take these few minutes here to talk about one other thing too, while people are thinking. Remember, I actually showed you on that default screen, there were those predefined fields. So we had the little section down below called user-defined fields. If you want to give these names, like maybe, I don't know, accident location or, driver's license number, you can actually use those if you want. You can go to File, Setup, System Options, and there's a button in the bottom left corner called Field Names. Okay, and you can give those, actual, static names. So I could say like, or maybe I'll do like, I don't know, phase, something like that, paralegal, and then maybe the date field we'll call, date of birth or something. So you can give those fields actual names, just so you know, if you, just want to keep it simple.
All right, it looks like those are all of the questions that we have. Scott, if you don't have anything to add, I think we can wrap this up.
Yep, I'm good. Thanks everybody for joining.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.